My name is Graham Watts. I'm a senior solutions engineer here at Sumo Logic. And then at the end, my partner Brian over here, who is the dashboard PM and senior product manager at Sumo, is going to come show you some new features. And so, before I hop into this, who here has ever had that experience where you try to explain what you do at work to someone, maybe a friend of a friend, or maybe at the bar, and their eyes start to kind of glaze over? Whenever that happens to me, I just say, I make dashboards. So I really like dashboards. I'm glad to see that a bunch of other people like dashboards too. But there's three things that I want you to take away from this talk. I want you to understand how to use dashboards for operations, also things for like business intelligence, and also security use cases. So just in general, how do you build dashboards for those use cases? Second thing first is discover the value of that at your company. Second is how to build. And then third is go use that at your organization. And so instead of taking notes, don't try to copy anything down. We're going to post these slides on the community at the end. So no need to try to copy down cool queries and remember them. I would actually rather have you try to think of a use case that you can go apply some of this to at your current company and your current data sets. And then at the end, come grab me, come to the Genius bar over there, and try to build something in your actual account. That's my goal, is to have you guys walk away with something useful in your company accounts. And so some quick stats on our dashboards. Over 400,000 unique dashboards have been built. And over the past 30 days, 2 million dashboard views have occurred by over 50,000 unique dashboards and 15,000 unique users viewing that. And so dashboards are a huge part of Sumo. I like to think of collection as important but hard part, and dashboards as the fun part. So this is my favorite part of the product. And so some of the use cases, I'm going to cover all 5 of these, but in general, when I work with my customers, these are the things I try to zoom in on. Do you want to get some sort of business intelligence for your product management team? Do you want to improve your customer experience, or maybe make sure your service or application is running better or faster? Also build pipeline, are things deploying correctly, and security as well. And so this is a very cool example. This is our own product team building adoption metrics for our new UI. And so that little home tab that you click where we put all the certification stuff and the learning materials, this is actually our own dashboards that people like Brian look at and track to say, hey, are people using that new feature? Here's another one, the Learn tab. So once you click the home, you can go into Learn and you can view all of our videos. This was a main focus of our new UI redesign. So we really wanted to track who's clicking what, how many times. One of my favorite ones was, of all the people that clicked that try the new UI button, how many people actually went back to the old UI? And then we should probably go talk to them and help them, or measure if that's going down as we push new changes. And so this is something I always point out to my customers when they ask, how should we use Sumo for our customer success, support, operations teams? This is one of those moments where when in our keynote, Samsung said, hey, 95% of our users use Sumo. Hopefully at Sumo it's 100%, but this is our own dashboard of our own users and accounts. And so, I've had salespeople catch DDoS attacks of our customers. I've had, customer success people be able to predict that, hey, this person is viewing this support page a lot. I'm going to, give them an email, give them a call, and help them go set that up. And so this is one of my favorite Sumo on Sumo use cases, is how we make sure that our customers are happy and understand how they use the product and how they adopt the product. Here's a zoom in of that build use case. So if you want to not only track, if something is broken, to maybe how did that broken code get there, or did it ever make it at all? You might want to pull in things like your API calls from GitHub, maybe logs from your Jenkins or other build server. So this is an entire build use case where you're monitoring that very early front end of your software build cycle. For run, this is one of our major use cases. You can really put anything you want in a run use case, but I usually think about things like, Is the underlying operating system healthy? Are the services running on that server healthy? Is the infrastructure healthy? And my favorite one is, pulling your custom application logs in and parsing out things like latencies and other error metrics. Also multi-cloud, so touching on that infrastructure part a little more, is the stuff that's powering your service or application healthy underneath. We partner with all three major platforms, and so if you want to understand the full stack, you probably want to pull in these infrastructure metrics and logs too. And then security. The best way to describe security is Sumo is the single platform for you to complete your security investigation or a review of if something was hacked or attacked and how. And so we're going to pull in things like file integrity monitoring and endpoint protection and other threat intelligence feeds like guard duty on top of our own threat feed. And that just makes it faster for you to be able to go dig in and identify what's wrong. One of my favorite examples is install the threat intelligence app, see there's a malicious IP address contacting your service or a server, and then I just grab that malicious IP, type it into Sumo, and hit log reduce. And a lot of the times what I see is 8 different places that IP has traversed to inside your infrastructure. Maybe it's Office 365. Maybe they got in through a corporate tool and now they're inside your infrastructure. One of the more extreme reactions I get is people just hang up because they see something that's broken and they need to go fix it right away. So security, you can get a very good view of what you might centralize, but it's really just what tools and security types of tools do you use and could centralize. And then so based off of all the stuff I'm going to tell you today, a lot of it's already built for you. You don't need to go reinvent the wheel for each one of these panels, so don't forget about the app catalog and also the ability to kind of sort on the left by your use case type. And so what I'm going to cover now is just all the different types of use cases and features that you can use to build a dashboard. Here's a quick list, but I'm going to go through these. And so first one is filtering. One of the dashboard best practices is don't try to build 8 different types of a dashboard, zooming in on individual pieces, right? So if you have, if you want to build a dashboard for customer health, you can build it across all customers and use a filter to drill into certain customers or certain regions and things like that. So definitely use dashboards and also take advantage of our new autofill capabilities, which are going to suggest to your users based on data that you've either defined or data that we see parsed out in those fields. And so this is actually our search templates and how it then carries over to dashboards. And so what you can see here is I can tell my end user, these are the 5 log levels that I want you to be able to pick in that pick list. And so once you define this search filter and then add the panel that's using it to a dashboard, that filter is going to appear right on your dashboard. And so here's another one of my favorite use cases internally at Sumo. When we have a salesperson or anyone trying to look at, hey, how healthy is my customer? How is Samsung SmartThings doing? Instead of typing in a really long number that's some kind of ID, we can actually use a lookup and say, type in Samsung, and then Sumo, go look up their customer ID and insert it into my query. So you can see right here, the user sees Samsung. The result of the query is an ID that we looked up for you. So very powerful for things like support use cases and other use cases where you have to kind of insert a string there. Single values and status. As a dashboard best practice, always think about putting the simple stuff in the top left and then the more complex stuff farther to the right and lower down. And so if you have a table with 8 different column headers and a bunch of different information, you're usually going to want to put that farther down. And I think about it like reading a book, right? I'm going to focus top left to the right. If you put something really complex and maybe confusing in the very top left, your dashboard users might see it and say, hey, that dashboard is really confusing or hard. So if you make one of these kind of as a top row or top left, that can make your dashboard easier to read and consume. And so some of the cool stuff you can do here is change the color of that background or the text based on the value. Really popular one is, if there's no data, there's no errors, make it green and make it say good. So you can really play with these and customize them based on your use case. Simple distributions. This is just adding a count, adding an average. So whenever you want to go from raw data to pie chart, bar chart, single panel viewer, just add that next line, which is going to be some sort of mathematical aggregation. So with maps and geolocations, we actually have a few new partnerships that are going to improve the speed and accuracy of the geolocation you can look up. The geo information you can look up on an IP address. And one of my favorite ones is actually connection type. So you can actually look up, based on someone's IP address, are they on a mobile internet, or are they on a direct connection, or are they on high or low speed internet? And you could potentially correlate that with, did this user quit the session early or give us a bad feedback score? So you can look up a lot of stuff with our geo lookup information. Most commonly, people think of like zip code or state or country, but there's a bunch of other cool stuff that you can grab as well. And so the key here is you have to either have latitude, longitude in your log, which is totally fine. Maybe your developers wrote the log and it has those values, or you have an IP address and you go look it up. Then you're just going to count by the latitude, longitude, whatever other fields you want to include. And so tables, these are good for things like workflow. Maybe I want to add a link into my table. This is actually from our Guard Duty app. It sees, hey, there's a Bitcoin miner attacking this EC2 instance, and you can click on that hyperlink, and it's going to actually open up something like the EC2 console of AWS. I also like this for when you just have a lot of columns and you want to make it more readable. And then some things you can do here that I'll usually do is sort, order, and alias your fields. And so sort, you just do sort field name that you're charting. Alias, you're just going to do as the field name. And then fields is going to allow you to place or remove certain columns that you want to show in that table. And then so you can also transpose these tables. So I like this example where you see you have a ton of 404s for that one server. If you were to put that in a transposed bar chart, you're going to see a huge bar and all the other ones are going to be really tiny, right? It's going to kind of drown it out. So you can either play with the axes and make major, minor y-axes, or you can just transpose it into a table, and that's pretty readable and another solution to wide variances in the value of the numbers. So here's an example of just visualizing things over time. You're usually going to do line chart, bar chart, area chart. So this is the same exact behavior. You can see the line chart's going to interpolate between data points. Sometimes you want that, sometimes you don't. But you just need to have that time slice operator and aggregate by time slice. And so when you have these, you can adjust a lot of things like those single panel viewers. For example, I like this example here. You have a count and a percentage. So I want to count my 404s, but I also want to know, hey, what percent of 404s do I have? And so you can see on the right axis is my percentage, and on the left axis here is the count of 404s. Some other things you can do is change the scale of the axes. You can do 2 different y-axes, etc. And so when you want to visualize multiple trends over time, multiple types of status codes or errors by multiple backend servers, then you use that transpose. And so if you haven't done the level 2 certification, a lot of it's focusing on this. But transpose is how you go from raw data to trends over time to multiple trends over time. So if you're ever thinking, hey, I want to see a few different lines over time, or a stacked bar chart or multiple area charts, the key is transpose and having the time slice in there. Another thing that I like to do usually when I have some sort of measurement of time is a percentile. So, 50th percentile, maybe the 99th percentile. This is an example of where maybe a few users on your website had a really slow, poor user experience. But if you just looked at the average, they're going to this dark blue line, you're not going to really see that or notice it because it's getting washed out in the average. So make sure to check out percentile if you have something that's like a time value in your log. Also, box plot. This is an underutilized plot in my experience, but this is good to show kind of the shape and the distribution of your data set. And if you're into statistics, you might check out box plot. The main thing you have to do is have the 20th, 50th, 75th percentile, also max and min. If you don't have that, it's going to give you a little error, but you can see that that last line of my query has each one of those 5. And so predict is another interesting one. Predict is going to allow you to, instead of alerting on stuff breaking now, you could actually alert on and filter on stuff that may break or be past a threshold in the future. And so I have a linear trend and I have an autoregressive trend. And so you can see they may be good or bad for different use cases. You can kind of play with them and see which one works best. And then down here, you can see where I added the model equals AR and the window equals to see how far out I want to predict. And so this is what I was talking about when you can alert on a future value. The errors predicted, or field underscore predicted, is actually a new column in your data set, and you can filter on that and alert on it. So let's say I'm projecting out 1 hour or 3 hours in the future on latency. I could actually have Sumo tell me, hey, I think the latency is going to be over 2 seconds in about 3 hours, which would be nice because then you don't have to wait until it actually breaks to get notified. Another one is outlier here. So outlier is just going to take a trend over time, and then it's going to give you, it's almost like a process control chart in manufacturing. It's going to give you those upper and lower bounds, and you can skim off these pink triangles as an alert. But make sure that you use it for other things other than a count of errors, for example. You could take that percentile of, of latency, or you could say, what's the percentage of my 404s? And you can apply outlier to that. And so this is another interesting one where I'm doing that percentage. I'm saying, what's the percent of my errors? Because you probably don't want to just do it on a count of 404s if your overall traffic volume is going to spike every Monday morning. So you probably want to get something like a ratio and then apply outlier to that. This is another interesting newer feature. You can actually do log reduce by time slice. So usually when I'm looking at a new set of customer data, what I'll do is I'll pick something interesting like error log levels or something they told me, hey, this is a bad thing that's happening in our application. And I'll run a log reduce on just those messages, and then I'll show it over time. And so what this is showing is that, hey, that get HTTP error that's orange, that's pretty frequent. It's happening at the same interval over time. But then you see that big spike where I have the purple and I have the green and pink trends. That's basically telling me there's new error signatures over time at that point in time. So it's almost like showing you new log reduce signatures in a chart over time. And then something else you'll see is see post here. A lot of these have a blog post that I wrote that you can click on and it'll walk you through how to write all of these. Another interesting one is TimeCompare. So this is one of my favorite ones to answer the question, is this normal? And so once you write a trend over time, you're going to have this TimeCompare box appear. And you can say, hey, I want to compare it to 1 day or 7 days ago. And it's going to write this last line of the query for you. So this is actually me saying, I want to take the average of the last week, plot that as this light blue, and then I want to plot current, the dark blue, on top of each other. So already I can run a quick time compare, and I can see that, hey, there's big spikes today versus historical. Another thing you can do here, this is one of my favorite ones to do. Let's say you want to understand, is the behavior normal today versus the average of the last 4 Wednesdays? So I can say, I can use TimeCompare to do that. Then I can actually do math. I can say, let's do today minus historical, and that's my new, I've collapsed that down into one trend line, right? What's the difference between this Wednesday and the average of the last 4 Wednesdays? And then on top of that, I apply outlier. So you're basically saying, is this normal? And also tell me if it statistically changes from the normal behavior as measured in the last 4 weekdays. We will do some questions at the end. I'm just kind of flying through here, but we'll definitely do some Q&A. This is an example that I usually do for support teams. And so it's nice to just place the whole log in a table on your dashboard. And so I can do star keyword star, and you can just quickly visualize a list of raw logs on your dashboard or in your data set using a dashboard filter. So a lot of the times if I build something for support teams, I'll have this included so they can just quickly visualize and maybe they get a call from a customer, they could type in that customer's ID and they can see the logs, or they could see the transactions or whatever it is that that customer is experiencing. And so here's some new stuff. We're actually introducing Sankey flow diagrams on dashboards. And so you could do this before in the search section, but you could never put it on a dashboard. What this is doing here is it's looking at one field in my log, and then it's saying, hey, if it has this text, it's a checkout. If it has this text, it's successfully processed. This is like an e-commerce website example. And so what you can then do is using a transaction ID or some kind of unique ID, you can string those together. So they're going to look at, hey, I see this ID, I see it at this state at this time, and now it's over here, now it's over here. It's just visualizing that, and you can hover over it and see the from and to and the flow. And so one thing that I've done before with a customer is, customer calls in or they have an error, they actually give me the transaction ID and I can plug it in and I can see the flow. I can see each transaction over time of exactly what that person experienced. So again, you need some kind of GUID or transaction ID for this to work, but it's pretty cool now that you could filter on one customer or one user or one transaction and visualize their exact flow with this. Here's another, it's maybe more security related, but you can actually name fields from state and to state. And so what I chose to do here is take the source IP as from state and the destination IP as to state. And so I'm actually visualizing, hey, here's all the requests to my servers, my 4 backend servers. But keep in mind, this can be done with any from and to. You just rename it as shown up here in the top right. So this is me saying, hey, where's this source IP hitting? Which one of my servers did it talk to, for example? And so you could filter source or destination. And then here's saying, which IPs are talking to this destination or this server. So maybe more of like a security investigation use case, but you can really do a lot with flow once you think about state A and state B and things flowing from one to the other. Whoa. So now I'm going to do a little bit of organization and workflow. Once you get your cool things on your dashboard, how do you make it easy for that team or user to actually use? One thing that I like to do is link to another dashboard panel. So you can say, here's my overview. Here's a panel for load balancer errors or latency. Here's one for OS errors. Here's one for application errors. You can actually have the action be, when I click on that panel, take me to the load balancer drill down, or take me to the application layer specific dashboard. And so you do that by just clicking on the little gear in edit mode on any panel, and then you're going to see this dialog over here, and you're going to be able to choose which dashboard to link to. So other things that I recommend are adding title panels, adding text panels. You can almost write like a little mini run book on a text panel with other links on your dashboard. So whenever I'm helping a customer build a dashboard for like a new team that's newly adopting Sumo, usually what I do is write title panels to kind of section things off. And then I also write text panels to give a little bit of instruction or explanation of, hey, what is this and how does it work? Click on this section to filter, etc. And so when you want to make sure your dashboards are performant, there's a few things that you can do. First thing that I recommend is just see how fast the search is when you're just searching it in the UI. If you're trying to do a dashboard of like 30 days or 14 days, or maybe it's like IIS or Apache data and there's a ton of data, you may want to optimize things. And you can do that first by pre-parsing your fields. And so you can use a field extraction rule to actually parse fields out on ingest so that when you open up that dashboard, it doesn't have to consume the time and resources to go and run the parsers in each one of those panels. And so You can also, set those filters. If you're going to use filters, you have to have parsed that field out. So if you ever are looking at a dashboard and you click a filter, and you're wondering why these panels over here didn't kind of reload, it's probably because they're not grabbing or parsing out the field that you're trying to filter by. And so in this example, I parsed out. You should parse out status code and method. Maybe you want to see, hey, are these 404s coming from mostly gets or posts? You're going to want to make sure to have both of those fields parsed out so you can do that. Another thing you can do is use scheduled views. So when I'm building a dashboard that's looking at 30 days, I'm going to make a roll-up table. And so instead of querying tens or hundreds of gigabytes of raw log data, you can actually create a new table, which is a scheduled view, and then you can have your query point to that table. So now I'm just querying maybe a few megabytes of data. And so this is a great way to compress down the data you're actually searching on. And then you can also use logs to metrics as well. So here's a quick preview. What this is doing is it's parsing fields out of your log and it's actually sending it into our native metrics backend. So it's treating it as if it were always a native metric. And so it's going to load faster for you. And so some last cool features. We're going to allow you to, right now you can manually import and export content as a JSON file. We're actually going to open up a content API so you can version your dashboards. You can back them up. You can, as you launch a new version of your application, you could create a new Sumo dashboard or folder. We also have the Sumo Logic community. So people like me and our customers are adding stuff here before it actually gets into that app library. So if you have a cool idea or you have a technology you work with all the time and you have a great dashboard and you just want to get it out there and share it, you can export it and you can actually upload it or create a new folder in our content GitHub. And so this is definitely something where people can collaborate before things are official applications. And so one last thing I like to do is flip it into dark mode. This is just kind of a silly feature, but a lot of people love it. You can just click the 3 little dots and say toggle theme. And then also we'll have public dashboards. So you're going to be able to, for example, make an executive dashboard and then whitelist an IP address or range and send someone that link. Send your CEO a link to a dashboard. They don't have to be a user in Sumo, but they'll be able to actually view it. And you can even wrap that into like an embedded web page with an iframe. And so here's Brian for some upcoming new cool features.
Awesome. So this is the part where I get to show you some of the shiny new features coming out here. So again, I'm a product manager at Sumo Logic. I am product manager for dashboards. Love my dashboards. Some of those ones you saw earlier, tracking feature adoption, that's actually stuff that we would build when we roll out features and we say, how's adoption doing? And it's quite nice when you do something like roll out a campaign and you see a spike in usage and you can kind of say, oh, looks like that campaign worked or didn't work. Our current dashboards are great. We love them. We're actually in the middle of building our next generation of dashboards. I'm excited to give you a really quick preview of that today. Why are we doing this? Number one, a lot of you are here today because you are authoring dashboards for yourself, but more importantly, for the rest of your team. You need a way to create a dashboard that's going to be widely used across the organization. And I'm going to give you an example of how this works for us internally today, because we are a microservices-based company. We have people running new assemblies all the time. We don't have time to maintain a bunch of dashboards for everyone. So I'm going to show you really quickly how you're going to be able to make these more dynamic and reusable dashboards. And then also, how do you make it easier to consume as a user? Internally at Sumo Logic, again, we have all these different microservices running. As an SRE organization, or maybe as the person that provides observability to everyone, I want one dashboard that everyone could go to and look at the health of their system. You might notice a few different things about this dashboard here. Number one, these drop downs at the top, they're very similar to what Graham was showing you earlier with filters. What we have here is the ability to power these by what's called template variables. This is kind of like what we have in search templates today, but what we have in Sumo, specifically for our use case, is that I always expect to see these metrics for every cluster that I'm running. So that drop-down list, I want to make sure it's going to return all of the values that are available in my system. Because tomorrow someone might spin up a new assembly. I don't want to build a new dashboard for them. I want them to come to this so that they don't have to worry about that. So say I give this dashboard to the person that's running the forge assembly. They come here, they use the drop-downs, and what's really nice is that we'll dynamically generate panels based on some of these variables we were looking at. So this is really great for our end users because they get to see, okay, I'm running the Forge cluster here. I want to look at one metric over every single host. Or maybe you're doing this and you want to look at transactions by customer, and you're just trying to get that big picture view and quickly see what's happening across my environment. The nice part about this dashboard is that within the dashboard itself, you don't have to jump back and forth between the search and metrics tab. Inline editing, you can insert those template variables right in the query here. Graham showed you a little bit about how to do that in search templates. We let you do this in the dashboard directly. And then the cool other things you could do here, logs and metrics queries on the same visualization itself. This is where the unification becomes really exciting for us, because if you want to overlay, say, your CPU metrics or your transactions with the error logs you're receiving, this is where you could start doing this. And then, again, it's all about reusability. I want all of my teams to use the same set of dashboards. I want them to interact with it by clicking. I don't want them to use the query language. And you can imagine these scenarios where they're drilling into their particular hosts that are maybe causing some issues. And then finally, and this is a little bit more on the metric side, but let's say you're observing some issues in your infrastructure here. Let's say my memory's dipping here, and I want to pivot to the logs on that same host. We're going to give you these click-based interactions to quickly say, okay, I'm looking at my metrics, but help me drill down straight to the logs with one click here. And that's how you're really going to improve that mean time to identification here. And we're going to insert some of the metadata that relates to both the metrics and logs. A lot of cool stuff we want to do in the new dashboards that you could do today, plus some more. These are built from the APIs from the ground up, so you could programmatically create, update, and maintain these through APIs. We're very excited about that. Along with some neat other features here, like color coding your panels based on a metric. How do you make it easier for your end users to quickly identify things, pivot around, filter their dashboards, and so forth? So really excited to get this in a preview form over the next month or two. If you're interested, come find me. Let's grab a drink, let's talk about it. We'd love to get you involved in the beta. And in the meantime, keep making those great dashboards, keep helping your teams out. We're here to help you out. And all of these slides that Graham reviewed, and actually if we could go back to the presentation, we'll wrap up here. All of these slides will be available to you after the show. So there's a lot of great content on all of what Graham was going through. So hopefully now you've learned about all these different use cases. You might be more operationally focused, you might be security focused. Think through some of those other good candidate dashboards selfishly for you, but also other people in your company might be interested in finding out more. Hey, there's some data in the logs that you might be interested in. Check out the Learn tab in our product for more tutorials and features, some demos on how to use some of the dashboard features as well. And then start sharing these dashboards out. How many of you guys have level 1 certification now? Okay, pretty much everyone, so it's great. You probably know how to make a dashboard, start sharing it out. We always see Sumo Logic infecting organizations because you share it out, they see the value in it. Might make your life a little bit harder because they come back asking for more, but in the end, it's probably a good thing. So thank you guys so much for coming to this presentation. We have a few minutes left for questions. So yeah, thank you so much. Questions?
To help us tune the auto regression, is there a way to overlay the predicted value versus the actual value?
You mean from the historical, see how it trends historically? I don't know, Graham, if there's a way to, or if it's only forward-looking, or if we could do it historically.
So the predicted value, you wouldn't have an actual value yet, right? Because it doesn't exist yet. So, I guess I'm unclear what you're...
The question is, you have the predicted value for the next 5 minutes. 5 minutes elapsed. You hypothetically at that point have what you predicted it would be versus what it actually is.
All right, I'll answer. There is a way. It's not as seamless as we'd like it to be, right? Just to kind of, there are advanced operators in query language like backshift and other things that can actually go look back in previous time periods and then align values. It's a little bit of a PhD in Sumo, but it can be done.
All right, I'm sure you guys are pretty thirsty. Let's grab some drinks, let's hang out, come find us. We'd love to chat more. Thank you so much.